hard to describe how much I loved the TV show Hannibal. My first video on YouTube was a music video using footage from the show. When season 2 was approaching, I drew fan art, which was retweeted by the enthusiastic creator of the show, Bryan Fuller. And since most of his earlier shows were cancelled prematurely, the fans were especially fearful of Hannibal being cancelled too. So I constantly signed petitions to renew seasons, because at the time, it was my favorite show. It's not anymore.
Like overused punctuation, the novelty of Hannibal Lecter has waned.
Now I have this contradictory annoyance towards Hannibal, and it stems from being too familiar with it. Don't get me wrong, this is one of the greatest television shows of all time. It's well acted, the writing is sophisticated and poetic, and God, every frame is a lush, macabre photograph. But to me, all of the virtues are undercut by the fine print built into the show, like a gothic house that's rotting away from the inside out. Hannibal premiered in 2013, remixing the popular Hannibal Lecter books, made even more popular by the Hannibal Lecter films. So initially I was worried about the series capitalizing on the name with no artistic merit of its own, but I was pleasantly surprised. The show combines episodic formulas by hunting various killers, and long-form narrative inspired by the books. It's overflowing in ideas and philosophies that challenge conventional thinking, and Mads Mikkelsen's Hannibal Lecter is probably my favorite, managing to find drama, horror, and humanity inside of a monster. But I couldn't see the forest for the trees, and because I loved the show, I shared it with my friends and family. And that's when I started to see the cracks. I showed the series to 6 people. 2 of them stopped in the middle of season 2, 1 finished season 2, 2 of them stopped after a couple of episodes into season 3, and only 1 person finished to the end. They weren't in the know, so I could see how confused they were. I could see how frustrated they got, and when most of them quit the series, I could see why it was cancelled because of low viewership. I felt betrayed by a creator, like a churchgoer that God drops a ceiling on.
He dropped a church roof on 34 of his worshippers last Wednesday night in Texas, while they sang a hymn.
No wait, maybe I was so enamored and enraptured in an idea that I couldn't see the facts.
I was so blind.
In your defense, I worked very hard to blind you.
I used to love Hannibal, but
You let the fox into the hen house.
When the fox hears the rabbit scream, he comes a-running. But not to help.
the purpose of this video is not to say that Hannibal sucks, but that it has really specific long-term writing problems that increase the longer the show is on, which can make it frustrating to watch and hard to finish.
The devil is in the details.
Looking at the show with a little more sobriety, it's like I'm watching it in the daylight, which I don't know if you've ever tried to do that, but you won't be able to see anything. I read a post that went something like, if you're looking for Hannibal to make sense, then you're watching it for the wrong reasons. At the time, I agreed with that sentiment. You know, I'm not really a plot-driven viewer, which is why I talk about characters and images and feelings in my videos. But I think the show uses a principle of 1 foot in, 1 foot out to its detriment.
Got 1 foot firmly planted on both sides.
Hannibal marinates in sensory feeling, but the story is so plot-driven and the characters are so bound to the plot that there's a conflict between the two ideas, a clash between left brain and right brain. With any given media, there's always a ratio between logic and creativity. An equal balance of both results in something expected, like Forrest Gump. The plot and the emotions work together to make a fairly standard film. The further you stray from the middle, the more niche the film will be. Media to the extreme left will remove almost all emotional storytelling, and it derives interest through plot details. This is primer, which is like reading a manual for time travel.
There's an AN and there's a BN. Okay, let's say the AN is 12 o'clock, the BN is 12:01. All right, we start the machine with a weeble at the AN. It travels forward north.
You gotta write this down.
It's emotionless, and the visuals are in service of telling a well-oiled mechanical brain teaser. Media to the extreme right is exclusively focused on atmosphere, music, and emotional reaction. This is Under the Skin, a collection of haunting, bizarre imagery that's linked by theme, but not logic. Both extremes can alienate an audience, but when the ratio is unbalanced in a particular way, it makes it hard to know how to feel. I think audiences fixate on Christopher Nolan's plot holes because he cultivates logic and rationality, so when the logic doesn't add up, or if a scene is overly schmaltzy, it stands out.
Love is the one thing we're capable of perceiving that transcends dimensions of time and space.
On the other side, Hannibal cultivates creativity and surreality, a playground where everyone is a murderer. So the existence of science and procedure and evidence and medicine and beneficiaries and the legal system can sometimes contradict what we're supposed to feel. I'm not saying it's bad to mix rationality with creativity, but it can't excuse the series from plot criticisms. All of Bryan Fuller's previous shows have some kind of fantasy. In Pushing Daisies, Ned has the ability to bring people back to life for 1 minute, so the show is built around his power. The tone of the show is like a storybook. The colors are bright, the mysteries are whimsical, and the deaths are fantastical. So the show isn't really inviting you to say, this doesn't seem plausible. That's kind of a given. But Hannibal exists in the real world. The places are real, the FBI is a real institution, and nobody has superpowers except Hannibal's sense of smell.
I was aware one of my teachers had stomach cancer, even before he was.
And Will Graham's deductive insights.
You make jumps you can't explain.
No. The evidence explains.
But even his personality quirks are scientific, like avoiding eye contact.
It's hard to focus when you're thinking, oh, those whites are really white, or he must have hepatitis, or was that a burst vein?
So when the show selectively picks and chooses when to follow reality and when to drop it, it makes for a confusing experience. See, I can suspend my disbelief pretty easily. When it comes to how did Elliot Bouche peel his own back and hang himself from the rafters? Or how did Georgia Matchin get from Delaware to Virginia to Maryland back to Virginia? Or how did a starling survive in a dead body inside of a dead horse for days without oxygen? I can overlook all of that because this is fiction. The scenarios are supposed to entertain, and the series creates a heightened reality. But I have a problem when lapses in logic start affecting important character development or the momentum of the story. I think Season 2 is mostly boring, sometimes ridiculous, and it doesn't have any energy to it. But that didn't happen overnight. Where the characters are and what they do is a direct result of the actions in Season 1. Will Graham is asked by Jack Crawford to help investigate the Minnesota Shrike case, involving the cannibal Garrett Jacob Hobbs and his daughter Abigail. To assist Will and the FBI, Hannibal kills a woman named Cassie Boyle, introducing the copycat killer.
It's like he had to show me a negative so that I could see the positive.
The copycat is important because that's what Will is convicted of by the end of the season. When Will and Hannibal are closing in on Garrett Jacob Hobbs, Hannibal calls the house as a courtesy, just to see what would happen.
This is a courtesy call. Listen very carefully. Are you listening?
Yes.
They know.
Abigail survives her throat being cut, and eventually she makes it clear to Hannibal that she knows he called the house.
You be my dad, you be my mom, and you be the man on the phone.
Meanwhile, we're introduced to Nicholas Boyle, brother of the copycat's victim, Cassie. He shows up to yell at Abigail and her friend, Marissa Schur.
Did you help your old man cut out my sister's lungs while she was still using?
Hannibal discovers the blood on the rock and hides it, only to kill Marissa and frame Nicholas as the copycat killer.
The blood on her hands matches the tissue that we pulled from Marissa Schur's mouth.
Hannibal does this so it looks like someone is targeting Abigail and he can keep her close. Then Abigail kills Nicholas. Hannibal helps her dispose of the body. So then it looks like Nicholas is the copycat killer and disappeared. As time goes by, we visit episodic cases. Eventually, Abigail comes back into the story and starts collaborating with Freddie Lowndes to write a book. And the point is to tell it how she wants to, because she's afraid that the public or the police will implicate her in her father's crimes. But then Abigail reopens her own case by digging up Nicholas Boyle's body. This is the first moment that doesn't add up. She said she did it to control the timing, like it was going to happen anyway, but there's no way to know that. It also doesn't bode well for her if she's trying to write a book. And it catches Jack's attention, who already suspects her of helping her father.
This man, Nicholas Boyle, was gutted with a hunting knife. You knew how to do that.
Will figures out Abigail killed Nicholas in a dream. But instead of telling Jack, he goes straight to Hannibal.
Abigail Hobbs killed Nick Boyle.
Yes, I know.
Tell me why you know?
I helped her dispose of the body.
This is where the logic starts to break down and it forces characters down paths they don't need to go on. It makes sense that Will would lie to keep Abigail safe, but what doesn't make sense is that Jack doesn't investigate Nicholas Boyle's body. There's no CSI work, no gathering evidence, and he doesn't ask Will to look at the body. Remember, Nicholas Boyle was their prime suspect for the copycat killer, but there's no follow-up. But Hannibal has even more inconsistencies. First, why admit to Will that he helped move the body? When Will came into the office, all he had to do was act surprised and then tell him to keep it a secret. Same outcome without admitting criminal activity. But a better question is, why is Hannibal so protective of Abigail? It's just kind of understood that he is.
I couldn't bear to take your fingers. Not even one. They're so lovely.
Will, I understand. He's a stray collector and an empath. And he got so close to Garrett Jacob Hobbs that he felt like he was becoming him, so he feels paternal towards Abigail. But Hannibal is literally the opposite. He cuts women open while they're alive and pulls their lungs out, but from episode 1, he is by her bedside. Later, he says Abigail reminds him of his sister.
Abigail reminded me so much of her.
But I don't know. I believe Hannibal has some sentimentality, but only to a point. When the shit hits the fan, the monster comes out. That's why he's always reaching for a scalpel every time someone gets close to finding out what he is. He's prepared to kill everyone in the room to avoid going to jail. So why admit to helping Abigail hide the body? It would have been in his best interest to throw Abigail to the wolves at that point. The hitch in that plan, though, is Abigail knows Hannibal called the house before the attack, and that could implicate him. Hannibal has a pretty good legal strategy to say she's lying, but let's assume I'm writing a better script than that. He had a perfect strategy to get rid of Abigail. He convinced Jack and the police that she was being hunted by the copycat. Why didn't he kill her? The alibi was perfect. Neither Will nor the FBI were close to finding the copycat. Hannibal provided a strong motive, and if the copycat killed Abigail, the circle would be complete. But in order to keep Abigail alive and to bloat the plot over 13 episodes, Hannibal is constantly making decisions against his self-interest. Will's health continues to worsen while investigating Georgia Machin, a woman with Cotard syndrome.
She can't see faces.
So Hannibal takes him to Dr. Sutcliffe for a brain scan, knowing full well he has encephalitis. Hannibal then convinces Dr. Sutcliffe to keep it a secret, and eventually Hannibal kills him in his office. What he wasn't planning on was Georgia Machin to walk in on him. Hannibal kills her later in the oxygen tank. So here's my question. Why does Hannibal want Will to go to jail? I always thought it was in Hannibal's best interest, that the plot forced him to throw someone else under the bus, but that's not the case. Hannibal killed Dr. Sutcliffe to intentionally frame Will. It's possible it was preemptive, that he wanted to cover his tracks, but killing the doctor is actually what connects the copycat killings.
Are you saying that Dr. Sutcliffe was killed by Garrett Jacob Hobbs' copycat?
And again, why does Hannibal value Abigail's life or freedom over Will's? Hannibal seems to make a lot of decisions out of curiosity, but season 1 is full of scenes trying to quantify his friendship with Will. When Will misses an appointment, we're shown Hannibal's loneliness. And when Will is institutionalized, we're shown something similar. I doubt Hannibal would perform experiments against his own self-interest, so why did he do it? It's a question that's left ambiguous, unfortunately I think because the situation itself doesn't make sense. And at the 11th hour, it's time to figure out who the copycat killer is. There are 3 suspects. Suspect 1, Nicholas Boyle. Psychologically, not as interesting. However, this is the only example with literal DNA evidence on the body. That's why he was the suspect from the beginning. The murder of Dr. Sutcliffe can be explained by Georgia Machin, and her death could have been a suicide or an accident. As far as who killed Nick, Jack suspects Abigail but never follows up beyond asking her if she did it.
And you know nothing about his death.
Suspect 2, Abigail Hobbs. The FBI discovers that Abigail has been the bait for Garrett Jacob Hobbs.
Abigail Hobbs attended orientations at every school where a girl was abducted by the Minnesota Shrike within days of the abduction.
She knew her father's methods, she did kill Nick, and she had connections to every victim. This is the theory that's most likely. Concerning Dr. Sutcliffe and Georgia, the accident theory is still valid, or Jack posits that she has a taste for killing now.
Because she's got a taste for it now.
Suspect 3, Will Graham. Jack then abandons the theories with the most physical evidence and then jumps on the Will did everything train because Hannibal supplies him with that. Hannibal suggests Will went into an alternate dissociative state and committed the murders, and then he lies about Will's alibi concerning Marissa Schur. Essentially it's all he said, but it doesn't explain any of the other factors, like how did Nick's DNA get on Marissa Schur's body. But because Will decides to take Abigail to Minnesota, he looks guilty. What was he planning to do there?
I think I can catch him.
He just accuses Abigail of things he already knows or could guess on his own. Anyway, he suspects that she's the copycat or knows the copycat, and she fires back with,
I think that somebody could be you.
Is Abigail a moron? She suspected Hannibal of being a killer from the beginning.
I think who called the house as a serial killer.
So why did she jump on the bandwagon that Will was the copycat killer? Anyway, Hannibal plants a slew of evidence on Will and he's convicted for it. See, I think a possible disadvantage of the show is what everyone collectively knows about Hannibal Lecter.
Oh my God.
Freddy.
Oh my God.
He's a horror icon with 5 movies already. If they actually tried to make the series a mystery and took away the dramatic irony, that would have been a disaster. So the question then is not who's the bad guy, but how will Hannibal be caught and when? That should be the thrust of the show.
How do you relieve the agony of waiting for Dr. Lecter's capture?
Season 1, for all of its inconsistencies, mostly works because they have no reason to suspect Hannibal. But as soon as Will figured out he was a killer, that's when Will should have been stabbed and Hannibal should have been jailed. And that's why Season 2 doesn't have any tension, because there's a delayed call and response. For example, in Silence of the Lambs, Clarice is looking for Buffalo Bill, and we get to see who he is and what he's doing from the get-go. So when Clarice shows up at his door, it's really engaging, because you know he's the killer, but she doesn't.
Well, Frederica used to work for Mrs. Lippman. Did you know her?
No, Oh, wait. Was she a great big fat person?
Yeah, she was a big girl, sir.
But once she puts 2 and 2 together, we're not waiting hours for the action to happen. It's on now.
Put your hands over your head and turn around. Spread your legs. Spread your legs. Put your hands in the back. Thumbs up. Freeze!
The boredom in Hannibal comes from delaying the inevitable. It's a restless feeling, especially when so much time is spent recapping old events. And when the plot loses its meaning, that pretentious dialogue gets really irritating.
Petty irritations, deadly revelations, flat announcements of disaster.
The grunts and poetry of life.
Stretching Hannibal's identity and eventual capture turns Season 2 into an intermediate season that distorts character motivations for the rest of the show. For example, Will's constant battle with his inner murderer. In the episodes after Will is released from the institution, he slips back into his old routine, going to therapy and helping the FBI. Dramatically, we're led to believe that everything Will does is a ruse to attract Hannibal, so that he'll confess to murder or kill someone in front of him. Except Will says a lot of things that indicate he's actually struggling with morality. Sometimes he'll say something I agree with.
I think he deserves to die. But you didn't deserve to kill him, Peter.
But then he'll say something vague about his own emotions.
I envy you your hate. It makes it easier when you know how to feel.
He constantly fantasizes about killing Hannibal. Symbolically, he's dying to kill. And if you pay attention to the episodic cases, they're thematically related to the main characters. Will encounters a man who has eradicated his humanity and embraces his animalistic nature.
The doctors told me the internal map of my body didn't match reality. Do you know what it's like when the skin you're wearing doesn't fit?
I can imagine.
What I don't understand is why Will is struggling with this now. Will often flirts with evil minds, but he rarely steps over the line. But after everything he's discovered about Hannibal and sanity, how can he still question the morality of killing? Subjective media or unreliable narrators can hide things from the audience, but ultimately there is an answer. This show seems to opt for both. Will is a murderer, and he isn't.
You're not a killer. You are capable of righteous violence because you are compassionate.
You forced me to kill you.
I didn't force you to enjoy it.
Will kills Randall Tier in self-defense. Kind of. But he brutally beats him with his bare hands and then he mutilates the body in order to impress Hannibal. Even if the end justifies the means, how am I supposed to feel that the main character of the series cut up a body and fashioned it into a tableau?
I have to believe that Will was trying to maintain his cover identity.
Reality doesn't go away because you stop believing in it. It's stubborn like that.
Plus, Will acts like a creepy psychopath for no reason.
Can't let you go, Freddie.
This ambiguity spans over 7 episodes, so everyone has to speak in code the entire time. That's a long time for your main character to act like a murderer, and I don't think the show ever recovers from it. Regardless of what Will pretends to do, he did kill Randall and he did mutilate the body, and he continues to be an unsympathetic murderer for the rest of the series.
You have killed someone, Will.
Who was trying to kill me.
I don't know if I can prove that. You mutilated the body.
Personally, Will was traumatized when he shot Garrett Jacob Hobbs. It was a season-long trauma.
You've never killed anyone before, Will. It's a deadly force encounter. It's a lot to digest.
But killing Randall was easy. Legally, no matter what they do, they won't be able to convict Hannibal of being the Chesapeake Ripper. Katie Purnell warns Jack against entrapment.
You can't entrap someone into committing premeditated murder.
Yes, you can. You're doing it.
Either it is entrapment because the FBI is pushing Hannibal to commit a crime that he has no record of committing, or mutilating a body would overshadow anything Hannibal does. My point is that if the rules they're breaking don't actually work, then why don't they break the rules that do? If everything they're doing is illegal, they might as well just plant evidence and arrest him. I mean, what's the difference? It's why I think the plot of Season 3 is more successful, because all the characters are pushed to operate outside of the law.
Well, here we are. Outside the law.
let alone.
Season 2 is more like a ball and chain. It's not that the dialogue is bad or the concept is bad, it's the structure.
Sometimes you have the right idea and the right dialogue, it's in the wrong place in the script.
I would have structured the series closer to the books.
You like a book, Mr. Graham?
I have my imagination.
In Season 1, Hannibal and Will develop a friendship as Will investigates with the FBI. During that time, Hannibal would see many patients, one being Mason Verger, and his disfiguration would happen here. By the end of Season 1, Will would discover Hannibal is the Chesapeake Ripper and Will would be stabbed. Hannibal would be institutionalized. In Season 2, Will recovers from his wounds and begins working with the FBI again on individual cases, until he encounters the Red Dragon and would be forced to get Hannibal's help. Now either it could end there or Hannibal could escape. And in Season 3 we have the Hannibal arc, and however it ends would make more dramatic sense. If Will's feelings about Hannibal as a killer is an allegory for the relationship, it could be illustrated like this. It's all over the place. They begin as friends, then Will hates him, then he tries to integrate into his life again, then Hannibal stabs him, then Will chases him through Italy, then they go their separate ways, then Hannibal escapes and they team up together, and then Will throws them both over the cliff. Every time you think you understand someone's motivation, it's yanked away from you.
It's Lucy in the football. It just keeps pulling you away.
Come on. Whoa! No, I promise I won't do it again. Come on. I lied!
By structuring it like this, it clarifies Will's arc. Positive, negative, then some kind of closure. Clarity is important. We have to know what to feel, and that's what plot does. Another example of ambiguity is Margot Verger's sexual orientation. Out of the 4 people who finished Season 2, none of them understood that Margot is a lesbian, and the only one who finished Season 3 found out here. Now if you're a fan of the show, that might seem far-fetched. Margot's sexuality is one of her only defining character traits. For those of us in the know, we had exposure to the book and access to Brian Fuller's excitement weeks in advance. So going into the Verger arc, all the diehard fans knew she was a lesbian, just like we knew months in advance that she and Alana would get together. But my friends and family completely missed that. In the show, and only the show, Margot is introduced as an abuse victim who seeks advice from Hannibal. We're shown nothing about her love life, no girlfriend, and the only mention of her orientation is,
I have the wrong parts, the wrong proclivity for parts.
Now, I'm all for subtlety and dancing around labels, but throwing the baby out with the bathwater is bad writing.
Margot really pissed him off with all her button stitching.
How hard is it to say, I have the wrong parts and I'm a lesbian? Maybe you don't want to come out and say it, so how about something like this? Yeah, that's pretty clear. Actions speak louder than words, which is why sex with Will is a really bad misstep. Margot is using him as a sperm donor, but with an unknown audience, all they have is what you give them. When weighing a vague reference like proclivity for parts against sex with a man, audiences are going to pay attention to what speaks louder.
I'll show you mine if you show me yours.
And sometimes the show struggles with visual clarity. In another scene with Margot, she decides to pack up and leave when Mason makes it clear that he knows she's pregnant. But the scene never establishes who is leaving in such a hurry. It's shot waist high, it's dark, and coincidentally it starts right after Alana has a tense conversation with Hannibal.
I told you I was feeling paranoid.
It's not impossible to think Alana got scared and wanted to leave town. Bedelia did that. When we finally see who it is, 1, it is dark. Even in the best conditions, it's hard to tell who it is. And 2, this series definitely has a type, excluding all the Minnesota Shrike girls that are supposed to look alike. There's Abigail, there's Alana, there's Margot.
They're all very Mall of America.
And every time I see Beth LeBeau, one of Georgia Matchin's victims, I think, when did Abigail get her own house? Oh wait, that's somebody new. The show even finds a way to merge Margot and Alana's faces together. I'm not sure why they didn't go with the book description of a pixie cut bodybuilder. At the very least, it would separate her from the other female leads. The vanity plate is supposed to tell you who it is too, but only if you know what muskrat means. Again, for those who aren't in the know, no one says that the Vergers live at Muskrat Farm at this point. The show's biggest sin is a lack of clarity. We're not told that Gideon survived a gunshot until he shows up again. We're not told that Chilton survived a gunshot until he shows up again. In the second episode, Hannibal catches Freddie Lowndes recording his conversation, and he makes a pretty overt threat.
You've been terribly rude, Miss Lowndes. What's to be done about that?
This cut never fails to get a laugh because we're led to believe that Hannibal killed Freddie and is now serving her for dinner. So when Freddie shows up later, alive and well, it just leaves this uncomfortable queasiness in your stomach, like you were cheated or misled. Because the plot and the characters are so obscure, it feels like the show is written episode by episode. I know it's not, but considering a template for the show already exists, it looks like Bryan Fuller laid down the tracks as he went. This can manifest as a retcon, or retroactive continuity, which happens in long-form storytelling when a writer establishes a new piece of information that changes the meaning of old information. For example, when Jack finds out Bella has lung cancer, he says,
"You don't smoke?"
The irony.
It leads the audience to believe that this diagnosis is totally out of left field. But in season 2, Bella talks about her mother having lung cancer.
And I watched her go through exactly what I'm going through now.
So when Bella says,
lung cancer,
Jack should have said, like your mother. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it can be. Hannibal whips out a tape recorder when it's convenient for the plot. And we're supposed to believe that Alana has always been bisexual, but never spoke about it. There's an argument for that, but we get intimate details on Franklin's love of cheese, but not Alana's bisexuality. I know Alana prefers beer over wine.
I appreciate beer more than wine.
How hard would it be to integrate her sexuality into a conversation?
You realize those candidates thought we were having an affair? Why didn't we?
Probably because I had a girlfriend at the time.
I can't see it as anything other than plot convenience. When Alana and Will kiss, she says they're incompatible because Will is too unstable, or that she'll obsess and try to fix him. But helping Mason kill Hannibal, and then sleeping with Margot, and then teaming up with her to be a surrogate, and all the crazy drama involved in that, plus whatever psychological damage Margot has, is that somehow better? It's hard to believe that Alana got more naive. I guess all that overthinking went right out the window. Alana got passed around. There's no getting around that. Hindsight is 20/20, but that's kind of my point. Another example of seemingly improv writing is Freddy's fake death. In a scene that homages the character's death in Red Dragon, a body is glued to a wheelchair and set on fire. Seeing it for the first time was really cool, but in context, why did Will stage it like that? Why use a wheelchair? Really, it's just an Easter egg. In Red Dragon, Francis Dollarhide got the wheelchair from his grandmother's house, so it has personal meaning. So when they actually did the Red Dragon arc, well, they had to do it again. Gender swapping Freddy also leads to a complication. In every other iteration, Freddy is a man, so to add more female characters, Bryan Fuller made Freddy a woman.
We needed more female energy on the show.
Which is great, but he wasn't really thinking ahead. Because Francis strips Freddy naked, tortures him, bites off his lips, and lights him on fire. Now it's weird. Francis's rage is specific to emasculation and competition.
The killer's objection to the name the Tooth Fairy is likely grounded in the homosexual implication of the word fairy.
There's a reason there's a pad over Chilton's eyes. That's why switching it to Chilton makes sense. If it was the Chilton from Silence of the Lambs.
You know, we get a lot of detectives here, but I must say I can't ever remember one as attractive.
His only sins are being a sleaze and incompetent. In the show, he doesn't even have that. He used unethical psychic driving mostly for his own vanity, but it's hardly a reason to die. Chilton was the best option for the show at this point, but it's certainly not the best writing decision. One of the biggest themes of the show is comeuppance, and that deep down, all of us want to kill, so watching people get what's coming to them is satisfying. Freddy is just as slimy as her book counterpart, if not more so. She leaves evidence behind, her article leads to a policeman's death, she blatantly slanders Will to Abigail, and she takes pictures of his temporary colostomy bag. Even in Will's trial, Freddy outright lies about him.
She believed Will Graham wanted to kill her and cannibalize her like her father wanted to do.
While Chilton only mischaracterizes him.
The confused man Will Graham presents to the world could not commit those crimes, because that man is a fiction.
That's a big difference. So it's weird to set up all of this behavior and personal rivalry to never pay it off with any consequences.
Freddy is Will Graham's nemesis.
Yes, although I think there's I mean, it's interesting that you know, knowing Red Dragon, that they end up in this, I mean, very uncomfortable alliance together, and I think that there's some room to be explored there down the line as well.
Freddy disappears from the show with no overall purpose. Chilton was just a buffoon. He was kidnapped, disemboweled, framed as the Chesapeake Ripper, shot through the cheek, and forced to wear a metal plate. By humbling him this much, it's hard not to pity him. He didn't deserve to be burned alive. It's not necessarily bad writing, but it's writing that doesn't know how to make you feel. When a prick publicly insults a serial killer, and then the serial killer punishes him for that, that can be satisfying. We want to see Freddy get his just desserts. Weirder still is they actually eliminated potential reasons to see Chilton torture.
Thinks I'm his nemesis.
As the administrator, he could have been really rude to Hannibal, which would have pushed Hannibal to influence Francis. But they gave his job to Alana in the last half of season 3, which like a lot of things in the show doesn't make sense. First, it's a conflict of interest, considering she's a former lover of one of the institution's most dangerous inmates. If Hannibal came to the institution after her, she would have to step down. It's not like she needs the money, she married a millionaire. Second, Alana actively spent the first half of season 3 trying to have Hannibal killed. Why would she choose to participate in Hannibal's life if she hates him that much? She should hate him. But it was probably written this way because Alana didn't have any relevance in the show anymore, and inadvertently took away a satisfying reason to see Chilton killed.
Just like that gospel program. When you leave, they'll turn the volume way up. Dr. Chilton does enjoy his petty torments.
Though it does lead to 2 of the greatest performances in the show, so I can't be too upset about it. But God, he survived this? Which is pretty much a staple for the series. Anyone can survive anything leading to nonsensical twists. It's like a faith healer, and you get so caught up in the excitement and the joy and the shock, but your arthritis doesn't actually go away. So in season 2, Abigail is still alive, which again doesn't line up with Hannibal's MO. If his ultimate plan was to go on a European vacation with Abigail and Will, why did he ever send Will to jail? Same goes for Miriam Lass. Kept alive on the off chance that Hannibal wanted to frame Chilton as the Chesapeake Ripper? Or to torture Jack, a man he had never met yet? Then in season 3, we get to see more retconning when Abigail has the time of her life faking her death.
Can I push the button?
Yes.
Why did Bryan Fuller feel the need to add this? Because the twist in season 2 didn't make sense? This makes even less sense. Chronologically, it's sandwiched between 2 extreme emotional states, fear of death and traumatized hostage. To show scenes where she willingly complied with Hannibal to cut her ear off, and waited around for a vacation with Will doesn't match. Did they forget that she thought Will was the copycat killer in the scene?
Did he kill Marissa?
But the show really loves Abigail, so why not? Of course, the only character that doesn't get to live is Beverly Katz. The show received criticism for being misogynistic and racist, for killing her off solely so Will could feel sad. Maybe. I think what's actually racist is that every other character gets to live, literally, as a flashback or even as a fantasy in Will's mind, but Beverly, she's not even mentioned again. Bryan Fuller said, "We needed it to happen to our protagonist in order for the story to take shifts, and for our protagonist to take shifts. But it doesn't have a lasting impact. If killing Beverly Katz was the final nail in the coffin for Will to let go of Hannibal, great. But it's not, so fans have every right to be upset that a character was killed for temporary plot convenience."
As a woman of color, as a queer woman of color, it's like, okay, not a lot of these things are out here for me, and then I'm starting to watch Hannibal, and I'm all like, oh, hey, look, there's more women. Oh, hey, look, there are people of color in here. Oh, hey, look, eventually there are, queer characters.
What was obvious to me as the series progressed was an abundance of creator influence. Bryan Fuller encouraged a community of fans who bonded over love of the show. When I was in it, it felt like a family, like we were all participating in the show together. But Bryan Fuller is a textbook people pleaser.
We hadn't had Hugh act with Gillian Anderson yet. Don't you think we should do that in the second season?
Never in my life have I seen DVD extras with fans talking about what it's like to be a fan of the show.
She's not from the books, and then I hear Alana Bloom, and I'm like, she's Dr. Alan Bloom! What? Which, he only gets like a few sentences, but still, it's like, ah!
Yikes. I know how fan engagement feels because he retweeted one of my drawings. I felt included.
I think he knows what it feels like to be noticed by the creators of a show that you love so much, and he wants to give back that way. And it's really beautiful to see someone who cares deeply about people who take the time to watch what he's doing,
Fan engagement can be innocent, like letting a fan name one of the dogs.
Who's this?
Applesauce. She's mine.
But I think it substantially affected their writing. I started to see how often Bryan would make promises he couldn't keep.
Well, the Clarice we actually don't have the rights to, so what we are going to do is try to convince them to give us the rights by the time we get to season 5.
Well, not only did Clarice not show up, but there really wasn't a place for her either. And he's apparently trying to make a 4th season, but I just don't see that happening. Even if it did, what story is left to tell? There are no more books, and Hannibal and Will went over a cliff. Which brings me to Hannigram. And yes, I have to go there. Hannigram is the pairing of Hannibal and Will Graham, and fans hoped that the characters would become intimate or romantic since the beginning. But when a showrunner caters to his admirers, that's when the trouble starts. Bryan Fuller maintains that they are heterosexual.
As a gay guy, I'm fascinated with how straight men play.
So what really confuses me is why the show is somehow seen as a pinnacle of gay entertainment. This isn't progressive. I can prove it. I'm going to count every gay kiss in Hannibal, and I'm going to count every gay kiss in Sense8. The show's implied gay relationship doesn't exist, and their actual gay relationship has no chemistry. The relationship between Will and Hannibal snowballed to such a point that by the end, it became the only story that was being told. Secondary characters felt secondary. The whole point of television is the ability to tell long-form stories. It's kind of surprising to me that a movie included book details that a TV show didn't. But when so much time is devoted to how Will and Hannibal feel about each other, it sucks all the oxygen out of the room.
Is Hannibal in love with me?
The secondary characters only really exist to talk about Will, and by extension, talk about Will and Hannibal.
It's only a matter of time before they are back in each other's orbit.
You are here visiting an old flame.
It's just hard to know where you are with each other.
Over 3 seasons of television, the one thing Jack Crawford ever struggled with was his wife having cancer. Nothing else? When Bella dies, it really shows how little his character got, because there's not even an attempt to give him something to do or something to feel. So in the finale, he's just there without a conclusion because there wasn't a beginning. Every plotline has to revolve around them in some way. The Verger plot is about them. The Red Dragon plot is about them. If you like Hannigram, great, but my interest in the Hannibal universe exists outside of these 2 characters. I think the fact that Molly disappeared 2 episodes before the finale says it all. This was a woman who was perfect for Will, who shared his dog obsession and supported him, and he threw that away to play with Hannibal. The show got so distracted with Hannigram that it didn't even tell us what happened to Molly.
Molly, that was her name.
But really, it just doesn't make any internal sense. Will was an unofficial patient of Hannibal's, and because of Will's empathy, Hannibal felt like he finally met someone who understood him.
You're suggesting I'm more fascinated with the madness than the man?
Hannibal latched onto Will's empathy, but the reality of empathy is that Will can assume anyone's thoughts or feelings.
And you believed that he was valuable because he could think like a killer?
He could think like anybody.
Whatever Hannibal feels isn't special. And what does Will get from Hannibal? He's a psychopath, or at the very least, selfish.
You cannot function as an agent of friendship for a man who is disconnected from the concept, as a man who is disconnected from the concept.
Like I said earlier, the violent acts on the show are allegories for how Hannibal and Will feel about each other. Almost every major killer on the show is seeking transformation, or change. Will and Hannibal talk about change as a subtext for the 2 of them embracing their true nature.
He didn't murder those families. He changed them.
And the show implies that every kill is an attempt for these 2 to grow closer.
You called us murder husbands.
You did run off to Europe together.
Do I really have to spell out why that doesn't work? Brian Fuller wants it both ways. He wants to tell a realistic story about the FBI investigating serial killers. But he also wants to tell a surrealist love story, where murder is inconsequential, penetration is sexual, and violence is love. It's not a coincidence that every physical connection is preceded by violence. And Brian Fuller knows that. That's why he maintains that they're straight.
Also, I think it's probably better for gay culture that they're straight because they're doing such fucked up shit to each other that I'm like...
But then perpetually talking about how much they love each other to the point of completely dissolving who the characters are, is kind of pathetic.
My compassion for you is inconvenient, Will.
For example, does Will capture Hannibal by being clever, or even lucky? No, Hannibal, the serial killer who will do anything to avoid capture, turns himself in just so Will knows where he is. Violent psychopathy doesn't allow for sentimentality, and empathy doesn't allow for violence.
Extreme acts of cruelty require a high level of empathy.
No, they don't. That's literally the opposite of empathy. God, the frustrating part of this show is that it tries to convince you that up is down. Will would have the ability to feel what killers feel, but he would also have the ability to feel what victims feel. That's what makes him interesting. For him to lose sight of that is a badly written, inconsistent character. And it just pushes this abusive relationship that doesn't make any sense, at least from Will's perspective. Other than being a brutal serial killer, Hannibal feeds Will people, induces seizures, shoves an ear down his throat, gets him arrested, kills Beverly Katz, stabs him, kills Abigail in front of him, saws his head open, sends Francis after Will and his family, and just to be petty, sleeps with Alana.
I bond with Abigail. You take her away. I bond with
barely more than the idea of a child. You take it away. You saw to it that I alienated Alana, alienated Jack. You don't want me to have anything in my life that's not you.
But Will still pines after him like a puppy dog.
Hannibal!
How am I supposed to feel? Happy that he'll never learn his lesson?
You haven't learned your lesson, have you?
That he'll repeat the same mistakes over and over until the show is run into the ground?
I forgive you.
That he puts everyone else in his life in danger for his own wants?
Will you slip away with him?
Part of me will always want to.
You have to cut that part out.
This isn't love, and the show's insistence that it is drives me crazy. It's possible that this story is meant to be a tragedy, that we're meant to watch these characters suffer. But everyone else is swayed to be just as murderous. Abigail kills Nicholas, Alana and Margot kill Mason, Chio kills the man in the cage, Bedelia kills her patient and cuts off her own leg somehow. Even the kid is bloodthirsty.
You should kill him.
Given the song at the end, it doesn't feel like a tragedy, it feels romantic. What I wanted from the show was something closer to There Will Be Blood. We spend the entire film following a miserable, villainous character who destroys everything in his life with his own selfishness. And his son has to reject his power over him and walk away.
You have none of me in you. You're just a bastard from a basket.
I thank God I have none of you in me.
And we get that moment.
Was it good to see me?
Good? No.
But the series can't commit. He has to come back. Because how else would it end? He couldn't live happily ever after with Molly. And he couldn't live alone fixing boat motors. So of course he ran into Hannibal's arms. The series couldn't sustain itself because the foundations were broken. I can see why everyone but the fans got frustrated by the vague and inconsistent storytelling. I know I did. Will calls it beautiful, which tells me he hasn't learned anything. The best way to move on is to reject someone's power over you. And that's what I've had to do with Hannibal.
I'm out!